The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951. Before bug-eyed monsters became standard invaders, Hollywood introduced a visitor whose greatest weapon was his calm. In Robert Wise's The Day the Earth Stood Still, a flying saucer lands in Washington, D.C. Out steps Klaatu, a tall, stoic alien in a shining silver suit, accompanied by his silent sentinel, Gort. The film's opening wasn't loud or bombastic. It was eerie in its restraint, a moment that felt like the world holding its breath. Audiences of 1951 were living under the shadow of Hiroshima. Nuclear weapons had changed the course of human history, and the Cold War was escalating. Klaatu's mission cut to the bone. If humanity could not abandon violence, Earth would be eliminated to protect the galaxy. Critics immediately recognized it as an allegory. The New York Times called it an eloquent sermon for a troubled age. Klaatu wasn't a monster. His civility was what unsettled. If such advanced beings saw humanity as reckless children with matches, what hope did we have? And then there was Gort, towering, faceless, armed with a beam of pure destruction. To many, he represented the nuclear bomb itself, silent until provoked, merciless once unleashed. One command, Klaatu Barada Nikto, became a lifeline between peace and annihilation. The film left viewers shaken. The ending offered no resolution, no heroic victory. Instead, Klaatu departed with chilling words, "The decision rests with you." Modern science fiction owes much to this quiet, thoughtful film. The Thing from Another World, 1951. If The Day the Earth Stood Still was a sermon, The Thing from Another World was a nightmare. Released the same year, it transported audiences to a remote Arctic base, where a team of scientists and soldiers uncover a craft buried in the ice. What emerges is not a messenger but a predator. The alien, more creature than human, feeds on blood and spreads terror among the isolated group. What made it frightening wasn't just the monster itself, but the paranoia it spread. Cut off from the outside world, the men argue. Do they study it, destroy it, or fear that it has already infiltrated them? Film historian David J. Scull once described it as the first Cold War monster. The alien's icy origins and merciless nature mirrored fears of an inhuman enemy creeping in from the edges of civilization. In 1951, with McCarthyism rising, the idea of something inhuman blending into society struck close to home. One of the film's most memorable headlines came from Life magazine, which wrote, "Keep watching the skies." The phrase became a cultural mantra, echoing both awe and dread of the space race just beginning. Though the creature itself, bulky and Frankenstein-like, drew some criticism for looking more lumbering than terrifying, the film's tension carried it. The Arctic setting became a metaphor for isolation, suspicion, and survival. Invaders from Mars, 1953. 2 years later, alien paranoia crept even closer to home. Invaders from Mars begins through the eyes of a child, David McLean, who wakes in the night to see a saucer descend behind his house. What follows is one of the first films to mix alien invasion with suburban life, and it was terrifying, precisely because it looked ordinary. Soon, David's parents, neighbors, and even local police begin acting strangely. They are the same people on the outside, but cold, distant, controlled. Audiences instantly grasped the metaphor. In the midst of the Red Scare, anyone could be a communist, a traitor, or a spy. Even family wasn't safe. Critics at the time noted its dreamlike quality. The sets were stark and surreal, with endless sandpits and looming fences, echoing the unease of a child's perspective. The film didn't rely on elaborate effects. It thrived on mood. One review in the Los Angeles Examiner described it as a nightmare dressed in daylight. It came from outer space, 1953. By 1953, audiences were already used to flying saucers darting across the sky. But It Came from Outer Space offered something different. Aliens who were not necessarily evil, but whose very presence was terrifying. Directed by Jack Arnold and based on a story by sci-fi legend Ray Bradbury, the film follows an amateur astronomer who witnesses a spacecraft crash in the Arizona desert. When he investigates, he discovers strange creatures, shimmering, formless beings who only want to repair their ship and leave. Yet, in their attempts to remain hidden, they take human form, replacing townsfolk in eerie doppelganger fashion. Shot in 3D, a novelty at the time, the movie startled audiences with meteor crashes flying off the screen. But its real creepiness lay in its ambiguity. Were these beings invaders, or simply strangers misunderstood? In the tense Cold War climate, the question was unsettling. One reviewer from Variety noted, "The monsters are not monsters, but the fear they inspire is real." It was an unusual choice for the decade, to portray aliens with empathy. Still, the imagery was haunting. Seeing familiar neighbors act oddly distant echoed the growing American fear of infiltration. The body double concept would soon explode in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But here, Bradbury's fingerprints gave it nuance. Fear of the other, tempered by the hope of coexistence. The desert setting added to the alienation endless sand dunes, stark horizons, and lonely highways. The wide-open spaces seemed to whisper that Earth itself was vulnerable, small, exposed under the stars. War of the Worlds, 1953. The same year brought a very different vision of extraterrestrial contact, one filled with fire, destruction, and apocalypse. War of the Worlds, produced by George Pal and directed by Byron Haskin, adapted H.G. Wells' 1898 novel into a Cold War spectacle. Gone was Victorian England. In its place, small-town America. The film opens with strange meteor-like objects crashing to Earth. From them emerge Martian war machines, sleek, manta-ray-shaped crafts hovering on invisible beams. Their heat rays reduce everything to ash. Their force fields render human weapons useless. For 1953 audiences, still practicing atomic bomb drills and watching tensions rise in Korea, the imagery was devastating. Civilization's defenses, from tanks to bombers, crumbled in minutes. The invaders were merciless, unstoppable. The Academy Award-winning special effects made the terror feel real. Vibrant Technicolor flames consumed cities. Death rays cut through landmarks with shocking precision. Critics called it the most frightening spectacle yet seen on screen. But beneath the pyrotechnics lay allegory. The Martians were stand-ins for the ultimate enemy, unstoppable, faceless, and merciless. Whether viewers saw them as the Soviets, nuclear war, or simply fate itself, the terror was universal. The film's climax, of course, echoed Wells' original twist. The Martians were undone not by human heroics, but by microbes. To some, this was anticlimactic. To others, it was profound. It reminded audiences that despite atomic bombs and military might, nature itself remained Earth's greatest defender. Newspapers seized on this theme. One headline read, "Even invaders cannot escape God's plan." Indeed, the movie ends in a church where survivors pray as the aliens begin to collapse. Them, 1954. Not all aliens came from the stars. Sometimes, the invaders were of our own making. In Them, released in 1954, the threat is born of atomic testing in the New Mexico desert. Radiation spawns something unthinkable, ants the size of trucks, with crushing mandibles and alien-like shrieks. Unlike humanoid visitors or sleek saucers, Them tapped into a different terror that science itself could unleash horrors we couldn't control. For audiences living just 9 years after Hiroshima, the message was clear: tampering with nature could backfire monstrously. The film follows scientists and soldiers hunting the creatures through desert landscapes, sewers, and city streets. Shot in stark black and white, its sound design amplified the horror, eerie insect screeches echoing through tunnels, leaving audiences gripping their seats. The Los Angeles Times called it the first atomic monster film with true chills. Its success launched an entire genre of big bug movies, from giant spiders to mutant crabs. But Them wasn't just a spectacle. It introduced a procedural-style scientists, military, and government working together that shaped decades of sci-fi. This Island Earth, 1955. If most alien films of the early 50s were shot in black and white, This Island Earth burst onto screens in bold Technicolor. Released in 1955, it told a sprawling story that stretched from quiet American laboratories to the far reaches of an intergalactic war. The plot begins when scientist Cal Meacham receives mysterious components in the male parts, so advanced they seem impossible. He assembles them into a device called the interocitor, a communication machine that connects him with beings from another world. Soon, he's recruited into a secret project led by Exeter, a soft-spoken alien with a high forehead and strikingly human appearance. At first, Exeter seems benevolent, but as Cal learns more, he realizes the aliens are desperate. Their planet, Metaluna, is dying from endless war, and they need Earth's help. When Cal and fellow scientist Ruth are taken to Metaluna itself, they encounter the film's most famous creation, the mutant. With its bulging brain, insectoid features, and looming presence, the Metalunan mutant became one of the decade's most iconic monsters. Though the effects were occasionally criticized as campy, the film's ambition stood out. It was one of the first to show interstellar travel and alien civilizations in full color, paving the way for later epics like Star Trek and Star Wars. Critics at the time were divided. Some praised its spectacle, while others dismissed it as overblown. But for many teenagers who saw it in drive-ins, the sight of Earth scientists swept into cosmic conflict was unforgettable. Film historian Bill Warren later wrote, "This Island Earth was the first time audiences truly saw that our world was just one of many." Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956. Perhaps no film better captured the paranoia of the 1950s than Don Siegel's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Released in 1956, it took the creeping fear of infiltration and gave it flesh, or, more precisely, pods. The story follows Dr. Miles Bennell in the small town of Santa Mira, where residents begin insisting their loved ones aren't themselves. Soon he discovers the truth. Alien seed pods are replacing humans with duplicates identical in appearance, but devoid of emotion. The imagery was terrifying. Giant pods splitting open to reveal human forms, lifeless and soulless, waiting to take over. Audiences recoiled at the suggestion that one's own spouse, neighbor, or child could be an imposter. The allegory was immediate. In the age of McCarthyism, conformity was demanded, and individuality was suspect. To some, the pod people represented the spread of communism, a faceless collective erasing individuality. To others, they symbolized the pressures of American society itself, where standing out was dangerous. The Saturday Review called it a chilling fable of identity lost. Even decades later, critics continue to debate its meaning. That ambiguity made it powerful. The film's ending with Miles screaming, "They're here already! You're next!" was among the most unsettling of its time. The shot of him desperately warning passing cars captured pure paranoia, leaving audiences rattled. The legacy of Invasion of the Body Snatchers is immense. It inspired multiple remakes, each reflecting the anxieties of its own era: the 1978 version set in post-Watergate America, the 1993 take exploring military conformity, and more. The idea of alien imposters has since become a staple of science fiction and horror, influencing everything from The X-Files to Stranger Things. But perhaps what makes it timeless is its emotional core. The fear wasn't of monsters with claws or lasers, but of losing humanity itself, of looking into familiar eyes and seeing nothing inside.